For 8 years, her parents told every single relative she was a deadbeat who ran away to the army to avoid responsibility, until the White House medal ceremony interrupted their Sunday barbecue on the television above the grill. Her name is Sergeant First Class Alara Vance. For nearly a decade, her family treated her service as a shameful secret. But that medal wasn't for showing up, it was for valor under fire. So how does a soldier go from being the family disappointment to a national hero, while her own parents are telling cousins she's just hiding from life? The answer starts 8 years earlier, in a living room where a decision was met with nothing but scorn. In the Vance household, there were 2 children, but only one future that mattered. Her older brother, Marcus, was the family's polished prototype. Star debater, business major, the son who could charm any client at his father's firm. Their parents, Robert and Cynthia Vance of Scottsdale, Arizona, upper middle class and deeply image conscious, adored him for it. Dad was a partner in a commercial real estate firm. Mom chaired the neighborhood association. They valued 2 things above all else: prestige and predictability. Marcus delivered both without fail. I was the other one, the quiet one with her nose in a history book or a mechanic's manual while Marcus held court over dinner. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't difficult. I was simply off script. There's a difference between being a disappointment and never being considered in the first place. Here's a small example. My senior year of high school, I placed first in a statewide engineering competition for a drone stabilization system I built in our garage. The same weekend, Marcus had a mock trial competition. One guess where my parents went. When I came home with the trophy, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's creative, honey." He never asked how it worked. He never did. I told myself it didn't matter. I poured everything into my grades, my ROTC commitments, my applications. I figured if I couldn't be the daughter they celebrated, I'd be the daughter whose choices they couldn't ignore. And for one brief, shocking moment, I was. The day I received my appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point, something in the room shifted. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words I'd waited 18 years to hear. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what Marcus did when he realized the family narrative was under threat. The acceptance packet came on a Thursday in April. I remember because Marcus was home for a long weekend. He was 22, a new analyst at a prestigious management consulting firm in Chicago. A fine job. Fine was Marcus's kingdom, and he ruled it effortlessly. Dad opened the thick envelope at the breakfast table. His eyebrows went up. "West Point," he said slowly, like he was pronouncing a foreign word. "That's a real service academy." Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll find some discipline there after all." It wasn't pride. Not really. But it was the closest thing to recognition I'd ever gotten from him, and I held onto it like a lifeline. Mom called her sister that afternoon. She called 2 friends from her charity board. "Alara got into West Point, can you imagine?" Her voice had a new pitch to it, bewildered, maybe even impressed. At dinner, I glanced across the table at Marcus. He was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. His eyes were doing something else entirely, calculating, measuring the threat. I know that now. At the time, I thought he was just tired from the flight. That week, Marcus started texting me more. "How's the packing list look? Heard the plebe year is brutal. What's your major going to be?" He asked about my training, my future classmates, my career path. He remembered every detail I mentioned. I thought my brother was finally seeing me. I thought maybe this appointment had unlocked a new respect between us. I was feeding him intelligence. Every ambition, every hope, every vulnerability, and I handed it all over with a grateful heart. West Point was a shock to my system in the best way. The structure, the clarity, the sense of purpose. It was the opposite of the vague, performative success my family worshipped. I thrived. I found my tribe among the other cadets who cared more about integrity than appearances. I graduated in the top 15% of my class and commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the Army Ordnance Corps. My parents came to the graduation. They stood stiffly in the crowd, looking confused by the pomp and the cannon fire. Marcus didn't come. He had a critical client workshop. My first assignment was at Fort Hood, Texas, as a maintenance platoon leader. I was responsible for 60 soldiers and millions of dollars worth of armored vehicles. It was hard, gritty, glorious work. I called home maybe once a month. The conversations were always the same. Mom would ask if I'd met any nice doctors or lawyers on base. Dad would segue into Marcus's latest promotion or bonus. My world of diesel, discipline, and duty didn't translate. Then, in my third year of service, I got the orders everyone in the regiment hopes for and fears in equal measure: a deployment to Afghanistan. My unit was tasked with supporting a combat advisory team. It was the reason I joined. This was the real thing. I called to tell my family. I don't know why I thought this time would be different. I told them about the mission, the 12-month rotation, the importance of the work. Marcus's voice was smooth sympathy on the speakerphone. Wow, Alara, that's intense. Stay safe over there. 3 days later, he called our parents. I wouldn't learn the full scope of what he said until 8 years later, when it unraveled in front of the entire nation. But the damage was immediate. The call came at 0:30 my time. I was in the barracks packing my gear. My phone lit up. Dad, your brother told us everything. His voice was cold, flat. The failing out, the disciplinary hearing, all of it. Dad, that's not, don't. Marcus showed us the messages. He showed us proof. I sat down on the footlocker, the desert night air chilling my skin. What messages? What proof? Dad, I'm deploying. This is my job. Marcus said you'd say exactly that. A long pause. He said you'd have a cover story ready. My mother got on the line. Her voice was trembling with anger, not fear. How could you lie about something this serious? We told everyone you were an officer. Mom, please, I can send you my orders. I can give you my commander's number. Enough, Dad again. Don't contact us until you're ready to be honest. You've humiliated this family for the last time. The line went dead. I sat in that dark room for a long time, the hum of the generator the only sound. My phone screen glowed. Call duration, 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's how long it took my parents to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text from Marcus. Sorry, Alara, I had to tell them. I couldn't let them live a lie. He wasn't sorry. He had just executed a perfect tactical strike on my life, and he'd done it with a praying hands emoji. I was 7,000 miles from Scottsdale. I was about to lead soldiers into a war zone, and I had just become no one's daughter. I need you to know that. I tried everything I could from a war zone with a satellite phone and a heart that felt like it had been shrapnelled. Over the next 10 days, as my unit finalized pre-deployment checks, I called my parents 7 times. The first 2 went to voicemail. By the third, Dad's number was blocked. Mom blocked me a day later. I sent 3 emails. The last one had my deployment orders attached as a PDF, signed by my battalion commander. I included his office number. I included the public affairs line for our brigade. I gave them every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email got a response. I wrote a handwritten letter, mailed it through the Army Post Office. 3 weeks later, it came back to my fob, returned to sender unopened. I recognized my mother's looping script on the envelope. I called my Aunt Sharon, my mother's younger sister, the only one who'd ever sent me care packages at West Point. Sharon called my parents that same day. I know because she emailed me 12 hours later, her message just 3 lines. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. They told me to stay out of their family business. They said you made your choice. 7 calls, 3 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary, all of it. Every single attempt rejected, blocked, or returned. And here's what sealed it in my gut. This wasn't new. This was the pattern of my entire life, compressed into its most brutal, final form. Every competition they skipped. Every achievement they downplayed. Every time Marcus's version of events was accepted as gospel while mine was treated as a negotiation, this was just the terminal iteration. On the 11th day, I stopped trying. Not because I gave up, but because I had a platoon to lead into a combat zone, and 60 soldiers needed a lieutenant whose head was in the game, not 7,000 miles away in a Scottsdale living room. They had chosen a story about me a long time ago. Marcus just handed them the script. Deployment was everything you've heard about and nothing you can imagine. The dust, the heat, the constant low-grade hum of danger. My job was to keep the vehicles running, the MRAPs, the Humvees, the logistics trucks, so the advisors could get to the remote districts and back. It was a giant, endless puzzle of broken parts, supply shortages, and ingenuity. I loved it. In the machinery, there was no favoritism, no family drama. A broken axle was a broken axle. You fixed it or you didn't. My soldiers were my family. Sergeant First Class Daniels, a grizzled mechanic from Detroit who could diagnose an engine problem by sound alone. Specialist Chen, a whiz with electronics who could jury-rig a comm system out of spare parts. They didn't care who my parents were. They cared if I could get them the parts they needed and had their backs. And I did. For 8 months, that was my world. the rhythm of missions, repairs, and the stark, beautiful Afghan nights. The hollow ache of my family's silence became a familiar background noise like the distant generator. I told myself I was over it. I told myself I'd built a new life, a real one with a new family who valued actions over appearances. I was wrong. You're never over it. You just learn to march with the weight. Then, on a Thursday morning in late October, the rhythm shattered. My team was called out on a recovery mission. An advisor's MRAP had been hit by an IED on a remote road in the valley. The vehicle was disabled, but the crew was alive, trapped inside with sporadic small arms fire peppering their position. A quick reaction force was en route, but they needed a maintenance team on standby to hook and tow the wreck the second the area was secure. We rolled out in 2 armored vehicles. We set up a holding point about 800 meters from the strike site, listening to the chaotic radio traffic. The quick reaction force was taking fire. The medevac birds were being held off. Then, a new call crackled over the net. The damaged MRAP's fuel line had been severed in the blast. Diesel was pooling underneath the hot vehicle. If a spark hit that pool, or if another round struck the right spot, the whole thing would go up with 4 men inside. They needed to get out now. But the rear ramp was jammed, twisted in the blast, and the enemy fire was pinning down the soldiers trying to reach them. I looked at Sergeant Daniels. He looked at me. We both knew the manuals, the protocols. We were a recovery team, not an infantry assault element. Our job was to wait for the all clear. The all clear wasn't coming. The radio squawked again. We've got visible fuel leak. We cannot extract. Requesting ETA on repair or alternate extraction. The voice was calm, but I heard the edge. It was the voice of a man counting down seconds. I made a decision. I didn't think about my parents. I didn't think about Marcus. I thought about 4 soldiers in a metal box, waiting to burn. Daniels, Chen with me, grabbed the cutting torch and the jaws of life from the truck. We're going to get that ramp open. Daniels didn't hesitate. Roger that, Lieutenant. What happened next is in the official citation. It's also in the nightmares I still have sometimes. We dismounted and moved on foot, using the terrain for cover, lugging 80 pounds of equipment between us. The last 200 meters were across open ground. We could hear the ping of rounds hitting the dirt around the disabled MRAP. I remember the smell of diesel and cordite, the sound of my own breathing in my helmet, and one crystal-clear thought: don't trip. We reached the vehicle. The fuel was a slick, rainbow-colored pool spreading in the dust. The gunner in the turret was laying down, suppressing fire. I could hear the men inside shouting. Chen and I set up the hydraulic cutter while Daniels provided security. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The metal of the ramp was warm. We cut through the first hinge. Then the second. A round sparked off the MRAP's hull 2 feet from my head. I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. We peeled the ramp back just enough. One by one, the 4 advisors scrambled out. The last man was the truck commander, Captain Rodriguez. As he pushed through the gap, a burst of fire raked the side of the vehicle. I felt a hot punch in my side, just above my hip, and then a wet warmth flooding my uniform. I shoved Rodriguez the last few feet clear and turned to follow. That's when the spark found the fuel. The explosion wasn't the giant fireball you see in movies. It was a loud asterisk whump and a wave of heat that knocked me forward. The force threw me face first into the dirt. I remember the world going orange, then black. I woke up in the Roll 3 hospital at Kandahar Airfield. Tubes everywhere, a blinding pain in my side, and a doctor telling me I was lucky. The round had fragmented against my rib, missing everything vital. The burns from the flash fire were first and second degree on my right arm and neck. I'd need surgery and skin grafts, but I would live. All 4 advisors from the MRAP lived. My team, Daniels and Chen, had minor shrapnel cuts but were otherwise okay. They told me later they dragged me back to the vehicles, while the firefight still raged. The Army moves fast after something like that. There were debriefs, investigations, witness statements. Captain Rodriguez and his team nominated me for the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's 2nd highest award for valor. The paperwork began its long, slow climb up the chain of command. I was medically evacuated to Germany, then to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C. for reconstructive surgery and months of rehab. No one from my family called. No one knew. The one person I'd told about my deployment, Marcus, was presumably too busy maintaining the lie to check if the sister he'd labeled a failure was even alive. The silence from Arizona was louder than the explosion. My world shrank to a hospital room. The pain was a constant. The skin grafts itched and pulled, but at Walter Reed I found my second family. My physical therapist, Gus, a former Marine who called me Lieutenant Tough Stuff and wouldn't let me quit. My nurse, Captain Alvarez, who sat with me during the worst nights when the nightmares of diesel and fire wouldn't stop. And Sergeant Major Briggs, a legend in the Ordnance Corps who visited every wounded maintainer. He was in his 60s, built like a bulldog, with a voice that could strip paint. He became the mentor I desperately needed and the father figure I'd lost. One afternoon, he wheeled me out to the courtyard. "Vance," he said, "never one for small talk. I read the preliminary award write-up. That was stupid what you did." I looked down at my hands. "I know, Sergeant Major," he grunted. "It was also the right thing, the only thing. Your soldiers respect you. The men you pulled out owe you their lives. Remember that, the rest is just noise." He handed me a sealed envelope. "This is a nomination packet for the Career Officer Program. Don't open it yet, you're not ready." I tucked it in my bedside drawer without asking questions. He saw a future for me when I could only see scars. Recovery was a battle as hard as any in Afghanistan. Learning to walk without a limp, regaining strength in my burned arm, fighting the pull of the painkillers. I worked like my future depended on it because it did. The Army doesn't care about your family drama. Physical therapy doesn't pause because your parents disowned you. So I stopped looking for a Scottsdale area code on my phone and started focusing on the next rep, the next step. 8 months after I was wounded, I was medically cleared for limited duty. Sergeant Major Briggs's nomination had come through. I was accepted into a master's program at the Army's Command and General Staff College, a path for promising officers. I moved to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. No family, no safety net, just my VA benefits and my determination. I buried myself in books on military history and logistics theory. I graduated at the top of my class. I met Ben in the library. He was a history professor at the college, a civilian with calm eyes and a dry wit. The first person I told the full story to who didn't salute, didn't pity me, didn't try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said they missed out on knowing an extraordinary person. 6 words, that was enough. We got married on a spring afternoon in the Post Chapel, 30 guests. Sergeant Major Briggs walked me down the aisle. I'd sent an invitation to Scottsdale. It came back the way my letter had, unopened. Aunt Sharon was there, though. She cried enough for 2 parents. After the ceremony, Briggs handed me another envelope. "This one you can open," he said. Inside was a set of orders, promotion to captain and a follow-on assignment to the Pentagon to the Office of the Chief of Ordnance. A plum job, a career-making move. "Don't thank me," he growled. "You earned it. Now go remind those desk jockeys what real soldiers look like." 3 years passed. I became someone they wouldn't recognize. I thrived at the Pentagon, navigating the bureaucratic maze with the same focus I'd used on broken engines. I was good at it. I was promoted to major. Ben and I bought a small house in Virginia with a porch and a dog we named Sergeant, Sarge for short. It was a good life, a real one, built girder by girder with my own 2 hands. But that ache never fully faded. It lived in the tightness of the scar tissue on my side, a permanent reminder of what I'd survived and what I'd lost. I didn't wake up angry anymore. But every Christmas, there was a moment, just a flash, when I'd hang a stocking for Sarge and feel the absence of others like a cold draft. Aunt Sharon still emailed every week. She was my only thread back to that world. I never asked about them, but I always read when she volunteered information. Mom and Dad were healthy. Marcus was a junior partner now. He'd gotten married to a woman from a good family. The irony was not lost on me. Then 2 years into my Pentagon assignment, an official-looking envelope landed on my desk. It was from the Department of the Army Awards and Decorations branch. My heart stuttered. I thought it was about some routine commendation. I opened it. It was a notification. My nomination for the Distinguished Service Cross had been reviewed by a special board. Based on new statements from witnesses and a congressionally mandated review of Valor Awards, they were recommending an upgrade. My case was being forwarded to the Secretary of the Army, and then to the President, for consideration of the Medal of Honor. I sat down hard in my chair. The Medal of Honor. It was impossible. It was for legends, for names in history books, not for a girl from Scottsdale whose family thought she'd run away. Ben found me staring at the wall that evening. When I showed him the letter, he wrapped me in a hug and said, "It's about damn time." The process was slow, shrouded in secrecy. There were more interviews, more background checks. A team of historians verified every detail of that day in the valley. I was told not to speak of it to anyone. For 18 months, it was a silent, looming possibility. I carried on with my work. I was selected for lieutenant colonel early. The scar on my side faded to a pale, thick line. Then, on a Tuesday morning last month, my secure phone rang. It was a general from the Chief of Staff's office. "Major Vance," he said, his voice formal. "The President has approved the award. The ceremony will be at the White House in 4 weeks. You are to tell no one until the public announcement. Do you understand?" I could barely speak. "Yes, sir. Congratulations, Major. The nation owes you a debt." I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the Pentagon parking lot, the ordinary morning traffic. And I thought of a barbecue in Scottsdale, where my parents were probably telling some uncle about how their son Marcus was doing, and their daughter. Well, you know how she is. The next 4 weeks were a strange kind of limbo. I was living the highest honor a soldier can receive, and I couldn't tell a soul. The White House military office sent a liaison, a stern colonel who walked me through the ceremony drill. Where to stand, how to receive the medal, the order of speeches. I was fitted for a new dress blue uniform. The weight of what was coming felt like a physical thing, a pressure in the room. Ben was my only confidant. We'd whisper about it after dark, like kids with a secret too big to hold. But secrets have a way of cracking under pressure, and the first crack came from Arizona. Aunt Sharon called, her voice tight with a fury I'd never heard before. "Alara, there's something I have to tell you. It's about Marcus. It's worse than we thought." Before she could continue, my secure work line rang. A crisis with a supply chain audit. I told Sharon I'd call her right back. I never got the chance, because what she was trying to tell me was already in motion. A narrative bomb Marcus had planted years ago, and its timer was about to hit 0. Let me back up, because what Marcus did wasn't a single lie told in panic. It was a sustained campaign. Sharon had been feeding me pieces over the years, reluctantly, like she was disarming a booby trap one wire at a time. And the picture she painted was chilling. For 8 years, Marcus maintained the story. At every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every country club brunch, he performed the role of the concerned, disappointed older brother. "We don't really talk about Alara," he'd tell my parents' friends. "It's too painful for Mom and Dad. She just couldn't handle the structure." He'd shake his head, let the silence imply failure, addiction, disgrace. But he didn't stop at implication. He added details. He told my grandmother I'd been chaptered out of the army for misconduct. He told Uncle Frank that he'd heard from a vague buddy that I was working as a mechanic at a truck stop in Nevada. He told my mother, on the phone last year, that he'd tried to send me money and I'd refused, that I was too proud and too messed up to accept help. He flipped the entire story. He made them the victims of my choices. Sharon told me once, her voice trembling. He said, "Aunt Sharon, I've tried to reach her. She hates us for telling the truth. She's cut us all off." Meanwhile, I was in a Pentagon briefing room helping draft a multi-billion-dollar budget. The genius of it, and I use that word with pure disgust, was that Marcus didn't need my parents to forget me. He needed them to believe I had shamed them. That way, their anger became their armor. Their silence became justified, and he remained exactly what he'd always been. The successful son, the reliable one, the only child who hadn't broken their hearts. He wasn't protecting them from pain. He was protecting his position as the sole heir to their pride. And there was one more thing Sharon told me, something I didn't learn until that frantic call she tried to make. But I'll get to that. Ben figured part of it out over coffee one morning. He'd been sitting on it for months. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said, setting his mug down carefully. "About a year ago, I got a call from a colleague at the Defense Intelligence Agency. Someone using a fake consulting firm name had made an inquiry to a military database contractor. They were asking about the service record of Major Alara Vance. They wanted to know if there were any flags, any disciplinary actions, anything at all." I stared at him. The kitchen was very quiet. Sarge's tail thumped slowly against the floor. "Who?" Ben had a friend trace the digital footprint. The inquiry originated from an IP address registered to a commercial building in Chicago, the same building where Marcus's firm has its offices. My hands went cold around my coffee mug. "He was hunting for dirt," I said, my voice flat. "Anything he could use to make the lie stick, to prove I was a fraud." "He didn't find anything," Ben said. "No, because there's nothing to find." I could feel the heat of the mug, but it didn't reach the chill inside. He didn't just lie about me once, Ben. He's been trying to build a case. Ben reached across the table and put his hand over mine. That's not sibling rivalry, Alara. That's something pathological. He was right. Marcus hadn't told a lie and moved on. He had constructed an entire architecture of deception, and he'd spent 8 years reinforcing it, adding new bricks with every whispered conversation and every fraudulent inquiry. I could have done something then, hired a lawyer, filed for a restraining order, blown his world open with a single call to his partners, but I didn't. Because history, and a leak to the press, was about to do it for me in the most public, irreversible way imaginable. The White House planned to announce the Medal of Honor recipients 1 week before the ceremony, a standard press release to the major networks, but in the age of the internet, standard doesn't exist. A defense blogger, tipped off by a source in the awards branch, published a short, exclusive post 3 days early. Sources: President to award Medal of Honor to Army Major for Valor in Afghanistan Rescue. It named me. It named the battle. It included my hometown, Scottsdale, Arizona. It went viral in military circles first. Then it hit the local news in Phoenix. And then it landed in the inbox of my father's golf buddy, who saw it and immediately forwarded it to him with the subject line, "Bob, is this your Alara?" I was in a final rehearsal at the White House when my personal phone, silenced in my bag, began to light up, not with congratulations, with calls from a Scottsdale area code I hadn't seen in 8 years. I ignored them. They called again and again. When I finally checked my phone during a break, there were 14 missed calls, 12 from my parents' numbers, 2 from Marcus. The voicemail from my father was not what I expected. There was no joy, no shock, no pride. His voice was a low, furious growl. "Alara, call me. Now, what is this nonsense on the news? What have you gotten yourself involved in? You need to call and explain this to your mother before she has a heart attack." He hung up. The message from my mother was worse. She was sobbing, but not with happiness. "Baby, please, just tell us it's a mistake. Tell us it's a different Alara Vance. Marcus says these things can be identity theft, or maybe you're covering for someone. Just call us and tell us it's not true so we can fix this." They didn't believe it. Even with my name, my photo, my hometown in a national news story, they didn't believe it. Marcus's architecture held. The lie was more real to them than the truth staring them in the face from their own television. I didn't call them back. I called Aunt Sharon. "They saw it," I said. "I know," she replied, her voice weary. "Your mother called me hysterical. She said Marcus told them it was a clerical error, that you probably paid someone to put your name on a list to embarrass them. Alara, he's got them so turned around they think a Medal of Honor is a bad thing." That was the moment. The moment I realized the bridge wasn't just burned, the very ground it stood on had been poisoned. I took a deep breath. "Sharon, the ceremony is this Sunday. It's at the White House. It's real. And it's being televised on C-SPAN and the military channel." There was a long silence on the line. Then, a slow, understanding sigh. Oh my. They always have the big family barbecue on Sunday afternoons during football season. They put the game on the TV outside by the grill. "I know," I said quietly. Another pause. "Do you want me to be there, in Washington?" "More than anything," I whispered, the soldier's steel in my voice finally cracking. "I'll be on the next flight," she said. The final days were a blur of media training, protocol meetings, and trying to keep my nerves from screaming. The Army assigned a public affairs officer to me. He warned me the story was gaining traction. "Human interest angle," he said. "Decorated female soldier. It's playing well." He had no idea about the other, darker human interest story unfolding in Arizona. The night before the ceremony, Ben and I sat on our porch. Sarge lay at my feet. "What do you think they'll do tomorrow?" Ben asked softly. I watched the fireflies in the yard. "I think my father will rage. I think my mother will cry. And I think Marcus." I trailed off, because I truly didn't know what Marcus would do when his entire fictional world was broadcast live from the East Room of the White House. "I think he'll finally have no script left." Ben squeezed my hand. "You earned this, not for them, for those 4 men in that MRAP, for Sergeant Daniels and Specialist Chen, for you." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I know, but it still hurts." "That's because you still have a heart," he said. "Don't ever lose that." The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and cold. I put on my dress blues, the stiff wool, the rows of ribbons. The Medal of Honor itself would be placed around my neck by the president. An aide carefully pinned the pale blue ribbon of the award without the medal to my jacket. A placeholder. The real one was waiting. I looked in the mirror. A lieutenant colonel, my hair in a severe bun under my service cap, my scar hidden by the jacket. I looked like a soldier. I looked like a stranger to the girl they thought they knew. A black sedan took Ben, Aunt Sharon, and me to the White House. Sharon held my hand the whole way, her eyes shining. We were ushered through security into the bustling, historic chaos of the West Wing. Other recipients and their families were there. Older men, veterans of Vietnam, Korea, World War II, their hands trembling, their families beaming with pride. I felt like an imposter among these giants. We were lined up, given final instructions. I was the only living recipient from the modern wars that day. The press pool was ushered in, cameras flashing. I saw the C-SPAN camera set up in the back. My stomach tightened. Somewhere, 2,000 miles away, a grill was being lit. A television was being turned on. The doors to the East Room opened. The President and the First Lady entered. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, senators. The room was filled with the most powerful people in the country. And then they called my name. Major Alara Vance, United States Army. I walked forward, my steps measured on the thick carpet, my back straight, my eyes ahead. I stopped before the president. He read the citation, his voice echoing in the silent, ornate room. He spoke of the valley, the fuel leak, the cutting torch, the explosion. He called my actions conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. The words hung in the air, immense and terrifying. Then he took the medal from a velvet cushion held by a sergeant major. The sun glinted off the five-pointed star. He placed the ribbon over my head. The weight of it was profound. It settled against my chest, over my heart, directly above the scar from the round that had put me here. He shook my hand. The room erupted in applause. I saluted. The cameras flashed. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever was happening in Scottsdale, whatever denial, whatever rage, whatever crumbling lie, it didn't matter. This was real. This was documented. This was history. Marcus could spin all he wanted. He could not spin the President of the United States on live television. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Generals shook my hand. Senators thanked me for my service. I was floating, disconnected. My public affairs officer found me looking stunned. "Major, Vance, your story, it's exploded. The networks are picking it up. They're talking about the female Medal of Honor recipient. Your hometown local news wants an interview." I just nodded. Then I felt a vibration in my pocket. My personal phone. I glanced at it discreetly. A text message from Marcus. It said, "Congratulations. You finally found a way to embarrass us on a national scale." I stared at my brother's text as a 3-star general was mid-sentence, thanking me for my service. The disconnect was so vast it felt like vertigo. I put the phone away, plastered on a smile, and finished the reception. But the text was a crack in the dam. The flood was coming. It started with the voicemails. By the time Ben, Sharon, and I got back to our hotel that evening, my inbox was full. My father's messages had shifted from fury to a confused, stumbling urgency. "Alara, we saw it on the television. Was that really you?" My mother's were fragments of weeping. "Your uniform, you look so, I don't understand." I didn't call them back. Not that night. The weight of the medal around my neck felt heavier than the armor plate I'd worn in Afghanistan. It was proof, but it was also a judgment on them, on Marcus, on every silent year. I needed to breathe. The next morning, the public affairs officer called, his voice strained. "Major Vance, the story has gone fully national. Good Morning America wants an interview. The Washington Post has a profile team asking for access, and we're getting inquiries from Arizona. Local news there is digging. They've called your parents home." Of course they had. The human interest angle had a new, juicy twist. War hero's family thought she was a deadbeat. I could see the headline. I told the public affairs officer to issue a blanket no comment on my personal family life. It was the only wall I could build. Aunt Sharon stayed with us for a few days. She was my buffer, my interpreter. She fielded the calls from Scottsdale that I refused to take. She told me what was happening. "Your father is walking around the house in a daze," she said over coffee. "He's been playing the C-SPAN footage on a loop on his laptop. Your mother won't come out of her room. She's mortified, Alara. but not for the reasons you think. She's mortified by what she's done. And Marcus had gone silent. No more texts. No calls. Sharon heard from a cousin that he'd told his wife he was managing a PR crisis for the family and had left town for a business trip. I could have left it there, let them marinate in the public proof of their mistake. But a week later, a package arrived at my Virginia home. It was a large, flat cardboard box. The return address was my parents' house in Scottsdale. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, carefully packed in bubble wrap, was every single letter, every card, every photograph I had ever sent them from West Point, from Fort Hood, from Afghanistan. The ones I thought they'd thrown away. They had kept them all. On top of the pile was a new, sealed envelope, in my mother's handwriting, for Alara. I opened it. It was a letter, pages long. My dearest daughter, asterisk. I have started this letter 100 times. There are no words big enough to hold my shame. We saw you on television. We saw the president hang that medal around your neck. We heard him tell the story of what you did, of who you are. For 8 years, we believed a story about you that was small and ugly because it was easier than believing you were brave. Because if you were brave, then we were cowards. Marcus told us you were failing. He showed us fake emails, fake disciplinary notices. He said you were too proud to admit you'd messed up. We wanted so badly for life to be simple, for you to be the problem we could fix by turning away, that we chose the lie. We chose it every single day. I have looked at every photo in this box. I have read every letter. I see the officer you became, and I have no excuse. Your father is broken. He cannot speak of it without weeping. We have lost 8 years with our magnificent daughter, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. We do not ask for forgiveness. We do not deserve it. We only want you to know that we see you now. We see the hero you are, and we are so sorry. All my love, asterisk. Mom, asterisk. I read it at the kitchen table. Ben sat beside me, his hand on my back. Sarge rested his head on my knee. I didn't cry. The tears felt frozen somewhere deep, trapped under the permafrost of those 8 years. Aunt Sharon flew back to Arizona. She called me after she saw them. They're wrecked, Alara, truly. Your father looks 10 years older. He asked me if you would ever speak to him again. I told her I didn't know. What do you do when the apology you waited a decade for finally arrives, and it's too late to fix what was broken? You don't get those years back. You don't get a father at your promotion ceremonies. You don't get a mother to call when the nightmares are bad. The medal doesn't fill that hole. It just shines a light on how deep it goes. I waited 2 weeks. Then I booked a flight to Phoenix. I didn't tell them I was coming. I needed to see their faces without a performance. I needed to stand on the ground where I was erased and see if I still cast a shadow. Ben came with me. We rented a car and drove to Scottsdale. The house looked the same, perfectly manicured lawn, the big TV still mounted on the patio wall. I stood at the front door for a full minute, just breathing. Then I rang the bell. My mother opened the door. She was wearing jeans and a simple shirt, no makeup. Her eyes were puffy. For a second, she didn't register it was me. Then her hand flew to her mouth. Alara. Hi, Mom. She stepped back wordlessly, letting us in. The house was quiet. Dad's in the study, she whispered, as if speaking too loud would break something. We found him sitting in his leather chair, staring at a blank computer screen. He turned. When he saw me, he stood up so fast the chair rolled back and hit the bookshelf. He looked at my uniform. I'd worn my dress blues. He looked at the medal around my neck. His face crumpled. It was the most vulnerable expression I had ever seen on my father. Alara, he choked out. Dad. We didn't hug, we stood there, a canyon of silence between us. Finally, he spoke, his voice ragged. I watched the ceremony 17 times. I read the citation until I had it memorized. I am so proud of you, and so ashamed of me. That was the moment. The dam broke, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, devastating release. My mother started crying softly behind me. My father's shoulders shook. I didn't offer comfort, not yet. Where's Marcus? I asked. My father's expression hardened just a fraction. He's at his house. We haven't spoken to him since the day after the ceremony. We asked him for the truth, the real truth. He wouldn't give it. He said we were being manipulated by the media. He looked down at his hands. I told him to leave and not come back until he was ready to tell his sister what he did. That surprised me. It was the first real boundary they had ever set with him. I asked to see Marcus. Alone, Ben drove me to his sleek modern townhouse. I rang the bell. His wife answered, her face pale and anxious. "Ilara, he's in the den." She let me in and disappeared. Marcus was sitting on a low couch, staring at a financial news channel on mute. He looked up. The confident, calculating mask was gone. In its place was a hollowed-out man, buzzing with a defensive, trapped energy. "Come to gloat," he said, but it lacked its usual bite. "No," I said, staying standing. "I came to understand. Why, Marcus? Why did you need to destroy me?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Destroy you? Look at you. You're a national hero. I didn't destroy anything." "You tried for 8 years. The lies to our parents, the fake inquiries. Why?" He stood up, packing to the window. "Because you were going to be everything. Don't you get it? You got the appointment to West Point. You got the uniform. You got the purpose. I got a suit and a corner office and a soul-crushing mortgage. You were going to be the brave one, the honorable one, while I was just the successful one. And that's not enough, not for them. It was never enough for me." He turned to face me, and for a flicker, I saw the scared little boy behind the lies. "If you were a failure, then my success mattered. If you were a disgrace, then I was the good son. It was that simple." "It was that pathetic," I corrected him, my voice calm. "You built your worth on my imagined ruin. And when I didn't ruin, you had to keep building the fiction. You turned our parents against their own child to feed your own insecurity." He had no retort. The truth, laid bare in his own sterile living room, was indefensible. "I'm not going to sue you," I said. "I'm not going to expose you to your firm. That's your karma to live with, but you will write a letter. To every single family member, every friend, every person you lied to about me. You will tell them the truth, that you fabricated everything, that I served with honor. Aunt Sharon will verify it goes to everyone." He nodded, a small defeated motion. And then we will have no relationship. You are not my brother. You are a person I share DNA with, that's all. You will not contact me. You will not contact my husband. If one day you do the real work to become someone different, maybe that changes. But not now." I left him standing there, surrounded by the expensive evidence of the life he'd chosen, which had turned out to be as hollow as the lies he told. Back at my parents' house, we had a stiff, quiet dinner. The conversation was like walking on glass. They asked timid questions about my job, about Ben. I answered politely. The love was there, buried under an avalanche of regret, but it wasn't accessible yet. It was a ruin. As I was leaving, my father stopped me at the door. "What can we do?" he asked, his voice desperate. "Tell us what to do." I looked at him, at my mother hovering behind him. "You can start by going to therapy. Both of you. Not for me, for you. You need to understand why you were so willing to believe a terrible lie about your daughter for 8 years without ever picking up the phone. You need to understand that before we can even think about building something new." My mother nodded eagerly. "Yes, anything." My father's jaw tightened, the old resistance flaring. Then it faded. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay." Ben and I flew home to Virginia. The medal went into a case on the bookshelf, next to my wedding photo and a picture of Sergeant Daniels and Specialist Chen. Life resumed, but the tectonic plates had shifted. My parents started therapy. Sharon sent me updates. They were struggling, but they were going. Marcus sent the email to the family list. Sharon confirmed it. The responses were a mix of outrage at him and awkward, apologetic messages to me. I didn't engage. The family ecosystem had been poisoned. It would take years to detoxify if it ever could. Then, 6 months later, another package arrived. This one was from the Department of the Army. Inside was a formal invitation. My Medal of Honor was to be enshrined in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, my name added to the permanent display. There would be a small, official induction ceremony. I invited my parents. I didn't expect them to come, but they did. They flew to Washington, dressed in their best, looking nervous and out of place among the generals and senators. They sat in the front row. When I walked to the podium to speak, I saw my mother's face, full of a painful, awestruck pride. My father sat rigid, his eyes glistening. I kept my remarks short. I talked about the soldiers I served with. I talked about the debt we owe to those who don't come home. And then I said, the path here wasn't straight. It was built in the darkness of isolation as much as in the light of courage. But sometimes, the people who need to see your light the most are the ones who chose to look away. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they find the courage to turn back around. After the ceremony, my father approached Ben. He stuck out his hand. "I owe you an apology. I should have been the one to walk her down the aisle." Ben, ever gracious, shook his hand. "Sir, you should have been a lot of things, but we're here now." My mother hugged me, a real tight hug that lasted a long time. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to say it." It's not a movie ending. It's messy and slow and awkward. They visit twice a year. The conversations are still careful. The ghost of Marcus is in the room, unmentioned. The 8-year gap is a chasm we're building a fragile rope bridge across. But here's the surprising detail, the one thing I never saw coming. Last month, my father sent me an email. He'd been cleaning out his study and found an old file. Attached was a scanned news article from the local Scottsdale paper, dated from my second year at West Point. It was a short piece about local students at service academies. My name was in it. He had highlighted it in yellow marker. In the margin, in his handwriting, he had written, "My daughter, West Point." He had kept it. He had seen it, noted it, filed it away. Even at the height of Marcus's lies, some part of him had preserved a tiny, secret record of the truth. He just didn't have the courage to look at it until the whole world forced him to. That, more than anything, told me the man I remembered from before the lie was still in there. Buried, ashamed, but in there. I wear the medal sometimes on Veterans Day at formal events. Its weight is a reminder, not just of a day in a valley, but of the longer, harder journey home. I didn't get revenge on my brother. I didn't need to. I became someone who didn't need his approval or my parents to know my own worth. And that, it turns out, was the most powerful response of all. The door to my old life is open now, just a crack. I control it. I decide how wide it swings. And for now, that's enough. So where does that leave us? 8 years after a lie, and 1 year after a medal changed everything. The truth didn't arrive with a whisper, it arrived with a presidential salute and a national broadcast. It didn't ask for permission, it just was. If you're watching this and you see yourself in any part of my story, whether you're the one who was silenced, the one who was lied about, or even the one who, like my parents, chose the easier story over the harder truth, I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't care about your timeline. It has a patient, relentless way of surfacing exactly when it's needed most, often in the form you least expect. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. My proof just happened to be made of gold and blue silk, presented at the White House. I didn't get vengeance, I got clarity, and clarity is the foundation you can actually build on. Vengeance is a fire that burns everything, including you. Clarity is a light. It shows you what's really there, who you are, what you've built, and who showed up to help you build it. For anyone waiting for a family, a friend, a critic to finally see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who choose you every day without conditions. And if the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not cruelty. That's architecture. It's the architecture of a life built on your terms, not on someone else's lies or expectations. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Ilara Vance. I am a soldier, a wife, a friend. And I am finally, cautiously, learning how to be a daughter again on a new foundation, one honest brick at a time. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, or a truth you're waiting to be seen, leave a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done? And if you want more stories of resilience and quiet strength, check the description for one I think you'll love. Thank you for listening, for bearing witness. Now go build something true.